Nithyananda, everybody. Welcome back to another evening session of Vakyartha Sadhas. We are joined here again by a few of my fellow disciples and disciples of our Guru Bhagavan, Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. We've been going pretty consistently here. I think this is session 8 in a row, 8 days in a row, something like that. And we've had an awesome time amongst ourselves. And for those of you that have been joining in on these sessions, it seems like you're also enjoying them as well. And so we truly do appreciate you taking the time and participating in these sessions. Swamiji says, take at least 10 minutes and internalize these truths. And so if you do land on this video, take 10 minutes, sit here, contemplate these deep spiritual truths with us, and really enjoy and imbibe chewing on these powerful cognitions. Because that's really what Vakyartha Sadhas is. It's really about experiential sharings and expressing our understandings of whatever the spiritual topic is. And so it's really about also being in a space of deep listening. So there may be, 100 people participating, but only one speaker. That means 99 people are sitting there in a deep space of listening and contemplating, and really they're trying to soak in these truths as well, just from that listening space. And so if you are here, you can be active in the comment section, but I also really do encourage you to just be in that space of listening. And what Swamiji says is if we do listen deeply during his satsangs, then you should have about one or two understandings that you've gained from the satsang, and then from that you might get a couple clicks that you'd like to share as well with us. And so that's what we're doing here today. And in particular, this evening's session, today's topic of Vakyartha Sadhas is, again, we're going with enlightenment is real and possible, and delusion is your own making. And so this was the last night's discussion, and we're just going to continue further on with that. And before we get started, I'll start the session off with our evening prayer, and what's also known as the Satguru Vandanam. So if everybody could just bring their hands together in front of your chest, take a nice deep inhale. Om Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamutim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadiraksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunorahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. So last evening we ended the session, and as we end all of these sessions now, with a few powerful cognitions, a couple clicks that we've received from this Vakyartha Sadhas. And one of our disciples, fellow disciples last night, gave me a huge, really important visualization of a football player stepping back, or a quarterback stepping back into the pocket and throwing a touchdown pass to this wide receiver who's sprinting all the way down to the end zone to catch the ball. And he beautifully related this to the intensity needed for enlightenment to happen within you. And I really wanted to just start off with this again, because it's so difficult sometimes to understand that enlightenment is possible. I know for me, I get caught up in this impossibility of who am I to achieve such great things for my life, and enlightenment being the ultimate experience, the ultimate achievement for a human being. And so I constantly question, is it possible? And of course, Swamiji's bringing this up, and he's talking about it in these past few satsangs. And this visualization of the quarterback throwing a football, that is Paramashiva, throwing the football. And when you, the receiver, all you need to do is sprint and run as fast as you can. That type of intensity towards the touchdown, towards this goal of liberation. And we tend to complicate it sometimes in that, oh, like, I don't know what to do. And, you know, what is the process? You know, some people say, oh, I'm my own guru. And so there's all these different concepts that come into play, the things happening within our mind. And I I just, this visualization really settled in deeper with me throughout today, in that all I have to do is just sprint and run with full intensity and listen to my coach, do what my coach says on the sidelines. And I see my coach as Swamiji, as my guru, listening to what the play that it was called out and just being integrated to it. Because as long as I'm integrated to that, I'll catch the ball in the end zone. But all it takes for me is my intensity. And so that word just keeps coming into play for me more and more. Just be intense, live intensely. And that's how enlightenment is possible, living intensely and aligning to the guidance of your coach, for me, the guidance of the guru. And so I really wanted to just start off with that sharing that this really settled in with me throughout the day. And I'm grateful for the visualization of this athletic metaphor, obviously, but maybe somebody else can share a little bit on the intensity of what's needed to achieve this enlightenment, to have enlightenment as a possibility for you.
I can start off with probably the most important aspect, or actually the most one thing for sure you can do to not be enlightened is to believe enlightenment is not real, or to believe that it's not possible, or that you don't deserve it, or you cannot have it. So, as a converse, the very first step and the most powerful action or step you can do is simply believe that it's real. Simply also believe that it's possible, and then you can be enlightened. Because if all these three things are not there, no matter what you do, that space will not be yours. Because when the door is shut, there's absolutely no practice that you, or no blessing from Guru or God can really make you enlightened. You have to consciously choose. Because you are Paramashiva, you have to consciously choose that all these three things. Enlightenment is real, it's possible, and then I can be enlightened. So I think that's the powerful cognition I got from today's satsang from Swami.
Interesting, as you were saying that, I had the cognition. Will somebody? Why? Does somebody have to believe enlightenment is real? Then the question is, okay, then how would we describe enlightenment? And so, I mean, there's a million different ways to say describe it, but for me, I would describe enlightenment as a patternless space, a space with a void of patterns and ruts and blockages. And I know in my personal life, there's been moments where I've been stuck, and there's moments where I feel liberated from those ruts and patterns and feelings of being stuck. And so, just based on that progress, that internal progress and awareness, and a raising in awareness, I can logically say that there must be a space where all the blockages are gone, all the patterns are gone. So based on that assumption, I can say enlightenment is real. And based on my own experience that I've had shifted in my life in the past, I can say I'm going to be continuing to shift in the future. So I know enlightenment is a possibility for me. And now the only thing is, it goes back to what Drita was saying, intensity. How badly do I want this process to happen? How intense am I going to be in putting my energy in making this process happen in the quickest, shortest, most streamlined way? And ultimately, what I found in my personal life is when I align myself to Swamiji's teachings, that happens to be the fastest way to breaking my patterns, breaking my limitations, and breaking my boundaries in order to reach this space of enlightenment. And so the intensity, it really depends on each and every one of us. Like, we have the choice, we can decide how intense we want to be, based on how, like, there's so many different reasons. I mean, sometimes after being stuck in a pattern so long, you become so frustrated and you declare the world is suffering, like the Buddha did, Gautama Buddha, and then he used that as the basis of his intensity towards his enlightenment. And so another person might taste an experience of enlightenment, get a glimpse of enlightenment. For example, like Nithyananda, your awesome story. It's awe-inspiring, where Swamiji gave you that glimpse, and now you have that as a focal point. You have that as a reference to say, okay, well, this is where I got to be. Now that's my motivation to get there. So that adds to that's fuel for your intensity. So intensity, I think, can come from in a lot of different ways, and that will vary from person to person. But it does take, regardless of where it comes from, it ultimately takes you having the willingness to go for it. Yeah.
I just want to bring up what Ma Vidyaswarantra Priya is saying. If you can do what you're doing with a totality and intensity, that you are completely lost in the action, you have caught the thread of intensity. I can say that that really does relate to even the athletic metaphor. Athletes dipping into this space called the zone or flow state, which happens when you're just so caught in this moment of intense action. And there can be so many things happening around you, just like so many things happening in life, whether you're playing a sport or not. It's when you're so focused and you just block out all of the noise and your whole being is pouring into this purpose. Athletes will get a glimpse of this zone state, which is just I would say they're experiencing a different state of consciousness, the Turiya state that Swamiji says, but the fuel isn't the same. The fuel isn't I am Paramashiva and I want to experience Paramashivatva. If that were to be the fuel, then probably they would have a greater experience, these athletes that experience the zone state. But for individuals such as ourselves, seekers, disciples of Swamiji, when the fuel is Paramashivatva, and then we are moving with such intense action, with such intensity towards life, that's when that space will open up and flourish within us. So I think, yeah, we need to understand that enlightenment is possible, but then I think we also need to really understand that the fuel to obtain this state is Paramashiva. It is that fuel. It's nothing that we need to pull out from within us, that's, or like the food we eat, or some sort of materialistic driven motive. It is Paramashiva's fuel. Just like it's Swamiji's love showered onto us, overflowing us and returning back to the master. It is this Paramashiva's fuel that is also ignited within us and is fueling this experience, this desire to to be enlightened?
I have intensity in action. I have a situation which happened to me recently. So which makes me feel that when we say intensity in action, then we have to really look into like what is action. See, the experience I had was actually I wanted to lie down, so I did lie down, but the moment I lie down, I didn't feel like sleeping, but I also didn't feel like
Did anybody else lose him, or is that just me?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the I had a similar kind of question just about the intensity and what does it what does it mean to be intense? How to be intense?
So I just have a question for all of you. When you say intensity, is that intensity of your desire or belief, or is it intensity of action, or both?
I just want to speak on that a little bit. When you said that, so one cognition that Swamiji said just came up right away. Swamiji says, in Hinduism, it doesn't require your belief; it just requires your integrity to a particular truth that has been stated in the Vedas and Agamas. And so, to the first part of your question, I would say a big freedom we have as Hindus is not requiring an intensity in belief, rather requiring an intensity in integrity, which is parallel to an intensity in action, because consistent action is integrity. So that's how I cognize that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Welcome back, Ashutosh. You froze up.
The internet instability.
Do you want to continue with your question or your statement?
I mean, so basically what happened at that moment is I simply lie down, and I was very clear within myself. I don't want to move, but at the same time, I don't want to sleep. So what happened is that my body became inert, and then I had this like unreal pressure suddenly happening in my body, as if I had like a, I don't know, as if I had some pressure inside which was trying to come out, but couldn't come out. So my body felt so full. And I stayed like that for like an hour and a half. So my question, actually, I did miss part of the last chat, but at the end of it, kind of same thing. I was wondering, intensity in action, what does it mean? So I guess in my situation, the decision to lie down was my action. And I kind of lied down intensely. And then for like an hour and a half, I was just not sleeping, but not doing anything. And I was so wide awake and experiencing this intense pressure in my body. I was wondering why, like how, I other than in that moment, I had never experienced the body in that way. That kind of unknown, I don't know if pressure is the right word. It's just like, you feel so full. Yeah, it's like that fullness, intense fullness within the body. And that fullness was so intense. It was crazy. And I just sat with it and it just happened. So the only thing, my question is how I thought that this manifestation happened was that the clarity I had of like, I don't want to move, but I don't want to sleep. And it was actually it was so clear that sleep was not a possibility and moving was not a possibility. So I was wondering if it is that clarity which is responsible for the happening of that intensity, and is it an action to lie down and just being? Is it an action, or are we talking about action?
Yeah, when in that scenario, in your being, you can intensely be, so it does not necessarily mean it has to be an action.
So is being an action?
It um, I don't know. Just so everybody, I just want to reiterate today's topic again. Enlightenment is real and possible. Delusion is your own making.
I just had a thought on that last statement. Is being an action? Well, we can never not be. So are we always in an action? And I don't know, at this point, is this like more of a intellectual jugglery, or are we asking a real question? Because if we say that being, if we just decide to say that being is an action, then okay, then that's fine. But we can also say that being just is, and that being intense allows us to just focus on being. Because when I cognize intensity, I cognize being totally involved in whatever you're doing. So using your example, you were totally involved in just laying down, not interested in sleeping, not interested in moving, just being. And I feel like that's an example of being intense about doing a particular thing. So, I mean, in my own life, I feel like when I'm intensely involved in a particular action, I find that there's certain characteristics of that state where, for example, I'm not aware of time. Time seems to lose its like importance, if you will, because only that action is what matters, or that, you know, just doing, just being in your case is what matters. I don't know. Did you experience that? Were you keenly aware of time, or was time kind of just
Yeah, awareness of time was not there. It felt like I had lied down for like 5 hours, but it was only like an hour and a half. When I decided to move and got up and checked the time, it was like time definitely was not it was not experienced as I normally experience it.
Swadanthirapriya is showing something that's very pertinent to this. Being is intensity. Being complete, total, integrated, expressing your full energy is what I call being. This is Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam from his book, Living Enlightenment. So being is intensity. Totally integrated, expressing your full energy is what I call being.
If being is intensity, just to then, like you were mentioning, if being is an action, then we're constantly in action, because you cannot not be.
So it said being integrated.
So
No. Initially it was saying being is intensity, no?
Being is intensity.
Yes.
So I believe the word action can be a bit misleading, because if we are not doing anything, one way to look at it is that we are not doing anything. There's no action. But even in inaction, there's so many actions happening. We're breathing, our heart is beating, we're unconscious about it, but a lot of things are happening. But you can also then say, I'm going to be conscious about breathing. Then you can say, I'm actively breathing, right? So I mean, the action, I feel, is a relative terminology, but the being, it makes sense. And also, when what you just read, the comment, Nithyananda, it seems to me that intensity is related to your conscious participation, involving all our senses and our cognition and all our faculties of making decisions, faculties of experience, faculties of um, being present. So that may be a good definition of intensity. That's my understanding from this discussion.
Yeah, to me it sounds like intensity is an expression of Paramashivatva. Being complete, being integrated. These are all. This is all Paramashiva. And when you're expressing your full energy, that is Paramashiva flowing through you. So being is and intensity is Paramashiva. So when you are intense, you are the most divine, that you're expressing Paramashivatva.
I like what you said, Srinivas, where you it really clicked with me, where you said intensity is a result of conscious involvement. And I feel like this is a point where we can explore a little further and round this out a little bit, because I find that in my work, sometimes I guess the question is, where do we draw differentiation? Meaning, like, say we're involved in one piece of work and we're so involved into it, we want to do a good job, we want to be successful, we want it to turn out the way we envisioned it, but at the same time somebody is coming and speaking to us. So at what point are we intense about what we're doing and not not intense about attending to the person that's coming to speak to us? Or is it all one? Like, meaning, like, if we are intense in doing what's in front of us, we can shift our attention and be intense in that scenario as well. I mean, I don't know.
I think if we are fully present in what we're doing, Parmesan, and I don't know if I'm addressing your question, but I don't know if it is a question. I get what you're saying. But if we are intense about what we're doing, and then if somebody comes and asks us something or a question, we can then also be intense about listening, cognizing, attending to that person.
Sometimes I see what you're saying, and I'm following as well. Sometimes I feel like whenever we're so involved with one thing and another thing comes up, whether that be a person or another activity, our brain tends to linger on what we did prior, or and that's a really basic example. Sometimes we're doing one thing and we're thinking about 100 different things in the back of our head, and this is non-involvement in a way. And I feel like all non-involvement has these similar roots. I'm beginning to see how these lines are being drawn, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And part of my experience of that is that when we sleep, personally, when I sleep more than about, like 4.5 hours, I tend to have more thoughts. And when I reduce my sleep, my thoughts reduce drastically. So for me, to reduce my sleep more, it helps me to be more intense.
Do you also feel that by reducing your sleep, it increases the frequency of your intensity? So
What do you mean?
the statement you had just made is you feel like being more intense helps you to reduce your sleep quota. But a cognition that came to me was, does reducing your sleep quota also help you be more intense because your thoughts are reduced and you can be more involved in what you're doing? Do they work hand in hand, or do you think one leads to another?
What I shared was that my experience is that when I sleep less, I feel like my life is more intense.
Okay.
I have oh,
Okay, but yeah, definitely my experience also is that, yeah, it definitely can go both ways. Whatever you feel as being more intense, because my experience is when there's less, and this is, I feel, is one of the most powerful things about whatever we feel intensity may be, manifesting Paramashiva, whatever you think of as enlightenment. There's the two components: is doing it from the correct space, from the correct context. So like, the Sankhya, multidimensional logic. So as much as that is our context for action, and then the other part is the action, being fully engaged in it. So my experience is more like, when the sleep is reduced, then it's like I have to willfully animate myself. So then I have to make the choice, and it requires more intensity. It's more like, instead of, it's more like I'm throwing myself into life. I'm pushing myself into life. I'm engaging myself into life. And that makes my whole life more intense, whereas, for example, if you're drinking a lot of coffee, it's like the coffee is creating the agitation. And, people will call that as like intensity or whatever. But when you don't have that, when you don't have the coffee, you don't have loads and loads of sleep, it's like, now you have to decide that you're going to be active, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, from what context you're going to do it. In a certain sense, then, to avoid sleepiness, you have to have more clarity, which essentially, to have a stronger connection to your source of energy means you're more aligned to cosmic truth. So I feel that that is a fundamental need for me, is for my sleep to definitely less than 5 hours. But the more it's reduced, I feel like essentially it's more opportunity for me to be more intense. And it does go both ways. It's like when you're intense, that's been my experience also, is when I decide intensely, I'm just excited about doing something and excited about being engaged in it, then I don't get tired at all. So I do feel it goes both ways.
Right. And I think especially people who have not spent any time at the Adinam or anything like that, it does require a certain level of intensity to decide, okay, tonight I'm just going to have 3 hours of sleep. Tonight I'm just going to sleep for 4 hours and wake up. That decision requires a certain amount of intensity for it to manifest as a reality. And I feel like the more you consistently align to that and be integrated to that similar decision pattern of having a less amount of sleep, the stronger you get at making the same decision. And that strength of integrity to yogic sleeping patterns translates to multiple parts of life. Sorry, am I echoing? I feel like I was echoing a little bit.
You're okay.
For a moment, it did echo.
Yeah, but you're okay overall.
Okay. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to say.
So just to reiterate the topic, which is enlightenment is real and possible. Delusion is your own making. So if you've just tuned in for this, take 10 minutes or so and stay the whole time if you'd like. We're coming up around 25 minutes left or so, and internalize these truths right now. Right now, we've kind of been focusing a little bit on intensity as a key almost quality of making enlightenment a possibility for you?
So, kind of taking the conversation more towards the topic that enlightenment is real. One, it begs the question: what is enlightenment? When you're not enlightened, how do you define enlightenment? Because enlightenment is not; it's an experience. It cannot be described. It cannot be written, put in words. That's why it's one of the most misunderstood concepts, because many people have tried to explain it, but it always doesn't. Most of those people are people that didn't necessarily personally have the experience, right? So how do you cognize something? How do you determine that it's real, and then you're going to experience that when you don't know what it is? And it's a question for all of you, but I can throw my 2 cents from my understanding. What I when I think of enlightenment, it's the highest frequency that I can. Two things: one, I have ever experienced, and two, I can cognize. So, a lot of us that have gone to Swamiji can attest to that we've seen glimpse at some point or the other of what that space is. Even though we may not be able to stay there permanently, we've seen the glimpse of it. That's why we continue to, believe in Swamiji, go back to Swamiji, and put in the effort, to various degrees. So, to my understanding, it's the highest frequency that I have ever experienced, and I can cognize. And the more I practice, the more I'm in the space of Swamiji, the more I listen to the satsang, the more I hang around with other seekers, such as this, all of you, beautiful beings here. The more it becomes my experience. I pick up little words of wisdom, a little experiences from each of you, and it all kind of adds to my own understanding and experience of enlightenment. And that helps me, make that cognition more solid and continue to grow in that path. So I'm curious to know, how would you guys describe what enlightenment is, and how do you, cognize it?
Yes, I guess I'll go next. I feel that enlightenment, as I described earlier, is as a patternless space. But before I get to that, the way I cognize enlightenment is a space that has infinite energy, that infinite excitement and infinite happiness as a result, but definitely excitement and capability, that feeling of capability to an infinite degree. And I feel like the closest I've come to experiencing that space, or having glimpses close to that space, is when I feel like I'm there's distance between me and my patterns. The more distance, the more clarity I get in relation to my patterns, and how to that disassociation of my patterns from myself, my being, I feel like more and more energy opens up in me. So if I were to like mathematically amplify that, I can say that the less patterns I have, the more energy I have, and the space of ultimate energy is also the space of patternlessness. So I'm making this is kind of how I draw my lines in my inner space, and how I relate to the space of enlightenment.
As soon as that question is raised, what is enlightenment? It is a blessing to get that glimpse. So many disciples of Swamiji have had this glimpse, myself included. And so for us, it's a little bit easier to say, like, oh, like we know what it is. And it's a question that doesn't get answered though for somebody that is kind of on the outside looking in, that is, maybe let's say they're watching Swamiji on YouTube, watching somebody talk about it or speak on it. It doesn't mean that enlightenment is real to that person. And so this, I don't know if this is flowing into another question on top of this, but if you don't know enlightenment is real, then you need to dive into understanding, okay, is this real, and really studying it and learning about, is it possible, by first understanding, is it real? And if you can't trust somebody, like there's times where you ask the question and my Kundalini just awakens, and because I've had this overwhelming experience, my eyes just start watering, like, I know what it is. I know what it is. I can answer this one. But if somebody can't trust in that, if they can't look into my eyes and say, this being is telling the truth, if they are caught in the delusion of their own mind and the doubt and they're, they for whatever reason, they've faced so many patterns in their lives that they can't trust something, then what do they do? How do they understand that enlightenment is real? And I think the intellectual understanding for me was a key component to the experience. And I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but I cognized and understood that consciousness pervades everything, that quantum physics is proving this as a truth, that everything has consciousness. And so I needed that click first in order to have the desire to experience that as myself. But here we are saying, no, listen to this being, this guru, like, invest your life and listen to his words. He will guide you, because that's my experience. That's, your experience is here as well. But that's where it becomes a difficult quest. And I think that's where you really understand if enlightenment is real or not, and if you can trust a being or not, by looking to the scriptures and looking to the Shastra Pramanas and seeing all the other beings that have come before us that are saying the same thing. So if you are on the edge of understanding or believing if enlightenment is real, you have to continuously read and seek other beings that are speaking about it. And don't just find one being. I continued to seek, and I found many beings. And for yourself, do your own little acid wash and find a way for you to just comprehend and come to a conclusion that, okay, are all these beings saying the same things? And if you look to various pramanas and the various different levels of acid washing, like Swamiji has shown us, and you look to the Upanishads, ultimately you'll understand that everything is flowing beautifully. And so you can understand, is enlightenment real, from experience, from intellectual understanding, and seeing all these other beings speak on it. And I just know that your seeking is imperative. It's the most important aspect of understanding, is enlightenment real. So it first starts with this, and it is a blessing to have a deep desire to seek God, the divine, Paramashiva, however you want to connect to this cosmos. It's a blessing to have that intense desire. But I know from my experience, and I'm sure from my fellow disciples, when you have that intense desire and you use that fuel to seek what is enlightenment, it will show itself. And if somebody's sitting here and just being in this Vakyartha Sadhas, that's definitely a very good start.
Drita, I have one question for you. I mean, on my own personal level, I have heard so many different variations of someone describing enlightenment, various gurus describing their enlightenment experience and the space of enlightenment and where they are and how they relate to life currently in their enlightened state versus out of their enlightened state. But you're one person who has physically, your nervous system as a physical experience, touched that space, been given a glimpse of that space. Could you spend a few minutes and describe what it felt like on a physical level. Like, how is it different on your right now, how you're feeling right now, and then the space you were in that moment, and what did it describe? Does your like describe the transitions that your body went through and all? I want to know the nitty gritty of what that felt like.
Yeah, so enlightenment is real. Staying on topic, I'm saying enlightenment is real from my experience. And my sharing is that I was standing in Swamiji's banyan tree, and it was a guided meditation, actually. Somebody said, I see Swamiji walking up to you, and he's putting this blue diamond in your chest. And they just said, let go, Jordan. My name was Jordan at the time. And I just knew they were talking about my chest. There's a little bit of tension there. And I just thought about my chest, and all of a sudden I was just like, oh, my whole body just became completely frozen, like cement. But every cell of my being, we have how many trillions of cells within our body, was just exploding in pure bliss. And my face was just like, I could not move, and I didn't want to move. Like, I was just like, and it was like, imagine like just a load of the most intense energy coming down on you, and you just gotta like, but I wasn't shaking. I was just like frozen in bliss, and the energy wasn't coming down on me. It was exploding from within me. And all like anytime somebody just talks about enlightenment, or like you even starting to lead into the question, I start to experience the Kundalini awakening. I start to like just resonate more and more with that space. And it's like any moment in my life now, I can just think about that, and I can dip into that space, and I can just connect and feel this. It is eternally blissful, but you don't understand what it is. Like Srinivas was saying, like the highest frequency that you can cognize. And I'm like, you can't cognize this frequency. Like, it is so beyond mind. It is so beyond comprehension. And it is you. It is who you are. It is your fuel. It is your essence. And what we need to do is just get out of the way. And it's so easy to get caught up. Like, I go through so many ups and downs throughout my day, and it just is like you get caught in the maya, in the soup of this delusion. But if you just continuously bring yourself back, and Swamiji always says, just be blissful, like be blissful, live blissfully. It's the truth. Like, you just continuously come back to that, and everything he's teaching is all about bringing yourself back to that. Power manifestation is just bringing yourself back to this Paramashiva space where you are eternally blissful. And I mean, I could share that story again and again. I can literally sit and meditate for hours and hours and hours and hours, just like this, just connecting to that space within me, because it is me. You can just sit with that intensity, because it was the most intense experience I've ever had in my life. So bringing it back around to intensity, which has been the topic of choice of how to become enlightened, in a sense. The essence of bliss, the essence of my experience of enlightenment, I could say it is intense bliss. Overwhelming, intense bliss. Be intense and be blissful. Those would be the two things that I would have to share.
No one wants to go after that explanation of enlightenment.
I have one question related to that. And in my own experience, when Swamiji is doing initiations or he's doing mandala processes and he's raising everyone's kundalini, everyone is going to have a different experience of that. And in my own body, I can feel like my back straightening out. I can feel the energy rising in my back, and I can feel like it rising up through my head and through my third eye, maybe even a heaviness or pressure or pulsation in the third eye. Is do you are these steps to get to that experience, or are these independent of that experience, or how did those sensations relate to that experience?
So I'll just we have 10 minutes left, so we can each end off with about 2 minutes talking about powerful cognition that we've received from this, and I can tie what you're saying into mine. Those are definitely there may be components. First and foremost, it is only the blessings of the master. It's only Swamiji's blessings. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't deserve this experience. I didn't deserve Kundalini awakening. I didn't deserve third eye awakening. He just gifted it to me. It was like just a blessing from Swamiji. He is an avatar. He's beyond an enlightened master to be able to do everything that he's doing on mass scale as well. And so my powerful cognition, to tie in what you just spoke about, is those are all like encouragements. I see it like, yeah, like when your spine straightens up, your Kundalini is starting to flow, and the more your spine is straight, the more intensely it can flow onto you. It's just like the little micro differences that are helpful in that. Kundalini awakening, it's necessary. Like I didn't have this intense experience of enlightenment until my Kundalini was first awakened. Third eye awakening was expressed after that, but like each component, like they all are a piece of the puzzle in some way, and they are helpful guidelines. And but again, my powerful cognition would be intensity and bliss are the necessities that you need to be expressing to be enlightened. And I guess I would tie in that is possible through the blessings of a guru, of Swamiji, from my experience.
Yes, my powerful cognition from today's Vakyartha Sadhas is, it's very simple. Intensity is conscious involvement. Just consciously getting more and more involved in everything that we do. One little example that I've been reliving for like half of this Vakyartha Sadhas is basically when I use the computer, I had experiences where, I was feeling each key that my fingers are pressing, and it's going fast, right? You have a certain pace, and within that pace, you could just like, it's like slow motion in the inner space. Outer space is normal motion, but the experience is so intense. You can feel the fingers pressing on each keys, one after the other. It's moving. Eyes are moving inside the orbit, and it's just. So I'm feeling like more and more of that, of conscious involvement in what I'm doing, is intensity, and that allows enlightenment to manifest.
My powerful cognition that I got during this Vakyartha Sadhas relates to that statement as well. Intensity is conscious involvement, but a little bit along with that is to decide in our conscious. Let's be consciously involved in our striving towards enlightenment. To be let's take that intensity and put it in the direction that of liberation. And I want to that's more of a statement for myself as well, and this is a statement that I'm going to be running with. So this is my powerful cognition.
For me, it's really the understanding, cognition that enlightenment is real. Not only is it real, it's my birthright. That's why I even exist. Whether we know it or not, we all, that's our ultimate goal. And then we keep taking birth after birth after birth until we, realize that's really what we're after, and then start to then consciously strive to achieve that state. So it's truly, a birthright, and then we can all have it.
My powerful cognition is that enlightenment is real and possible by aligning to Guru Vak.
Beautiful. So if you are also with us still during this Vakyartha Sadhas, please maybe leave in the comment section right now a powerful cognition that you can take away from this session, that you are taking away from this session. And it could be literally anything. And again, the topic was enlightenment is real and it is possible. And that's really what we focused on today. So much was enlightenment is real and possible, but also that delusion is your own making. So if you found a powerful cognition from this Vakyartha Sadhas, leave that in the comment section below and embrace that and experience that as your daily life as well. And so with this, does anybody else have maybe a final thought or word that they would like to add in with the last 3 minutes or so as a recap? Okay, so with that, we will close the session. Is it integrated if we close the session now?
I mean, it's up to us. We can decide. One thing that I would also just kind of share is that we did speak a lot about intensity, and intensity has, it does play a role in our enlightenment. And one of the understandings I have is that, because that's one of the things is, even Srinivas was saying earlier, that with our topic of that enlightenment is real and possible. So then, how else would we, be able to achieve something that, we don't have any idea of how to get towards that place? So the guidance has to come from a space that is beyond our understanding, and it has to be experiential. And and that is there is, of these younger civilizations that kind of pop up and go away every 1,000 years or so. There is a civilization that existed in documentation for at least 12,000 years. And the whole point was enlightenment. And there's many, many enlightened masters there with millions of books as a science, a reproducible science, where even those masters say it's beyond your understanding, but it's available as an experience. And I think invariably it was always achieved through intensity of dedication to that, even the unknown.
Mm. Beautiful. Okay, so with that, we will close out this evening's Vakyartha Sadhas. If you were here and participated, thank you so much for joining in. And I'm sure we will see you in further sessions. I know we're definitely enjoying these, and the people that have been coming regularly, it sounds like they have as well. So thank you very much if you have been tuning in. And Srinivas, Nithyananda, you guys have been a welcomed addition to this these evening sessions, and hopefully we can continue to have you here regularly as well. And Srinitya Ashutoshananda, Yanatmananda, of course, thank you very much for being here. And with that, we'll close with the Purna Mantra. So if you can all bring your hands together, have them in front of your chest. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyade Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyade. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. That's Sat. Sarvam Bhagavat Sri Nithyananda Paramashiva Paduka Paramastu. Om Nithyanandam. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody. Nithyananda, be blissful. Have a great evening.
And
Nityanandam.